The Steelers' 2022 season can easily be described in 3 words. Hard to describe. It was the first season without Ben Roethlisberger, who retired to a farm upstate for aging quarterbacks. It was the final season for GM Kevin Colbert, who ensured his Musk would leave a lasting impression on the team after drafting quarterback Kenny Pickett. The season was tumultuous, which is to say, I own a thesaurus, and ultimately culminated with a record of 9-8. Welcome to Shut Up Football. I'm Jeff Stoltzfus. That's Kevin. Today, we're talking about the Steelers. Every position group from top to bottom for every fantasy football format. We'll also answer 3 big questions. Can Kenny Pickett be a top 12 quarterback? Is Najee Harris's workload about to be scaled back? And does Allen Robinson have anything left? Grab a pop, ya yinzers. This is the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to go to Pittsburgh this year. I'm not kidding. I want to make it happen. I want to go see some bridges, go to a Pitt game, eat Rivers, whatever they eat there. I don't know. What do they eat? Do they have a thing? Pierogies? The hell's that? A dumpling? I'm in.
And now it's time for Breakdown.
Coach Tomlin is back, one of the longest tenured head coaches in the game, and one of the best at speaking at length without really saying anything.
There's nuggets, there's bits and pieces of information gathered daily in a variety of settings.
That dude should run for office. Kevin Colbert is no longer the GM. It's now Omar Khan. I am not above tired pop culture references. Just be glad I didn't go with my first choice. Oh, and there it is. I am every woman. Offensive coordinator Matt Canada remains. People have strong opinions about that. As a play caller, he's been called a basic bitch. I might be paraphrasing. If he doesn't get the most out of Pickett this year, there's a good chance they'll find someone else next year who will. Assistant defensive line coach John Mitchell retired. The team promoted Denzel Martin to outside linebackers coach. Inside linebackers coach Jerry Olofsky is gone. He was replaced by Aaron Curry. And linebackers coach Brian Flores left to become the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. Early opinions of the coaching changes yielded 2 words, young and thin, which is how I like my Tinder profiles and scarecrows, but sounds troubling for professional football staff. Linebackers Robert Spillane and Devin Bush are gone. Cam Sutton left to become a Lion, which sounds cooler than it is. They let Derek Watt go. I thought that was interesting due to the supposed resurgence in the fullback position. But I'll come back to this later. There were several necessary additions to the offensive line. I'm very familiar with former Eagle Isaac Seumalo. He's a sneaky good ad. He's at least a B-plus player physically, but also he brings a lot to the table mentally. Jason Kelce said, I think he's probably the smartest player I've ever been around. The Steelers are getting a steal. They traded the Rams for Allen Robinson this offseason. Hard to say how much he has left, but the Steelers will try to squeeze it out. They also grabbed wide receiver Hakeem Butler, a 4th-round pick by the Cardinals, who was most recently with the XFL's Battlehawks. Marcus Golden, Cole Holcomb, and Elandon Roberts are all solid veteran adds to the linebacking core. Omar Khan started their draft on the offensive line, which to me is what the first round is for. You either get the quarterback, protect the quarterback, or get after the quarterback. At the top of the 2nd round, they took cornerback Joey Porter Jr., and that just felt like robbery. Porter feels like he could be a core piece to that Steelers secondary for a long time, and playing where Papa Porter did was just poetic. They also grabbed D-tackle Keanu Benton in the 2nd round. I love me some Keanu Benton. In the 3rd round, they grabbed tight end Darnell Washington, a gigantic, super athletic pass-catching option. It wasn't a huge draft haul, but hopefully they did enough in free agency that it didn't need to be, and there's definitely a few guys here that should matter for this team for years. Kenny Pickett threw for 2,400 yards and had 10 touchdowns, including 3 on the ground, and 9 interceptions. But he didn't see action until halftime Week 4 versus the Jets. From Week 5 on, he finished around quarterback 25. He showed some good accuracy and grit, but it definitely felt like the Steelers had the training wheels on. Last year's run-pass ratio was 53.3% for passing, They ran a lot more than the previous years, which you'd expect with a rookie under center. I'd expect that number to increase in Pickett's second year. Pickett reminds me of a young Matt Ryan with a touch of Carson Wentz, meaning he's a smart pocket passer with just enough mobility to extend plays, but not enough that defenses need to spy him, and not enough to keep his fantasy floor high. To reach the next tier, he's going to need a lot of air yardage. I'm talking multiple 300-yard games. I'm expecting just under 4,000 yards for him this season. So no, I don't think he's a top 12 quarterback this year, but I think he'll be knocking on the door next year. The one thing still holding him back is he doesn't have a signature touchdown celebration. That's really a must. All the bigs have one. Aaron Rodgers has that little Titletown belt thing he does. Patrick Mahomes points to his fuck basket and sings "Who Let the Dogs Out?" That's 3 minutes and 18 seconds of uninterrupted Baja Men. Mitchell, don't call me Mitch, I'm a big boy now. Trubisky started 4 games last year. He didn't look horrible. Actually, he looked like a guy playing Tony Romo in a biopic for the Hallmark Channel. Unfortunately, we know what Trubisky is, a mall Santa, which is my term for quarterbacks that look like the real deal from a distance, but the more you see of them, you realize they're not legit. Like all mall Santas, they're all full of talent and upside, but the lack of consistency is what keeps them from being real starters. Trubisky's thrown for nearly 12,000 yards in his career. He's a good backup and mentor for Pickett. A lot of people thought Mason Rudolph would be Ben Roethlisberger's successor. 5 years later, he's still clinging to this roster. He's played 17 games for 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and averaged 139 passing yards per game. He re-signed to a 1-year deal this offseason. Tanner Morgan is an undrafted free agent from this year. He's also the oldest 24-year-old I've ever seen. I think I bought life insurance from that guy. He was drafted by the USFL Michigan Panthers, but chose to sign with the Steelers instead. I'll take Kenny Pickett in Dynasty. I think he'll be fine this year, but mostly I'm trying to get ahead of next year, when I think Pickett will take an even bigger step forward, and maybe isn't shackled to a Matt Canada offense. I can't rationalize him in best ball. Underdog currently has him down around 160th overall, just a few spots ahead of rookie Bryce Young. But Mac Jones is about 30 spots lower. I really don't see much difference between Kenny Pickett and Mac Jones. As a second or ideally third quarterback in best ball, I've been taking Jones for the value. Mitchell Trubisky and Mason Rudolph are both 28 years old. I'm not investing in either, even in deep dynasty. I can find better upside and better longevity elsewhere. Ain't nobody got time for that. You can subscribe if you want to. Or don't. I don't give a shit. Or do I? Is this just reverse psychology? Or apathy? Is it? The Steelers had 500 rushing attempts last year. That's 10th in the league. Only 272 of them went to Najee Harris. I say only because that's down from his rookie year. Total yards, yards per carry, and attempts all went down from his rookie season, which is weird considering the Steelers ran more. He's averaging the fewest yards per carry in the NFL while also leading with the most carries. So what's the deal? Are they just grinding Najee down? I don't want to call the man a liar, but despite Najee's assurances otherwise, I think he was hindered by the Liz Frank injury he suffered early in camp last year. He didn't miss any time, but he was playing with a steel plate in his shoe for half the season. Now, I'm no athlete, but if I had a steel plate in my shoe, I'd probably trip up the stairs and break my thorax. Assuming this was strictly a health issue, I see no reason to fade Harris. Even with the injury, he still managed over 1,000 yards and remained second for missed tackles at the position. Jaylen Warren was an undrafted free agent last year. He only averaged about 4 carries a game, but he finished with a decent 4.9 yards per carry. He caught a few passes per game and looked like a favorite target of Kenny Pickett. What struck me is he seemed close to breaking off more on nearly every run. I think he's got more room to grow in this offense. Warren is 5'8", 207 pounds. With that size and pass-catching role, he reminds me a lot of Jerick McKinnon. McKinnon is more electric, but he's not a crazy comp. McKinnon finished 10 spots ahead of Warren last year. Anthony McFarland Jr. was a 4th-round pick by the Steelers in 2020. In 3 seasons, he's barely played. He spent some time on IR. Last year, he was on the practice squad, and now he's signed a 1-year deal for low money. Currently, he's listed as the number 3 back on the depth chart. I'm not sure I even believe that. There are still dudes on the street I'd rather have as my 3rd-string running back. McFarland doesn't even play special teams. You know who does? Jason Huntley. Another depth piece on this team. He's just as fast as McFarland and has a history of kick returns. They also have Alfonso Graham and Darius Higgins. Higgins is a UDFA. He has an RAS of 9.5, but he was already cut by the Colts, so I doubt he catches on with the Steelers. Give me Najee Harris in all formats. I think the Steelers will run slightly less this season, but I'm not worried about his workload. I think he's going to get more carries this year, which should lead to fantasy goodness everywhere. I'll take Jaylen Warren in Dynasty and Best Ball because he's got a decent PPR role and could break out some touchdowns this year. In Redraft, he feels more like a roster clog or Najee insurance. I'm not avoiding him there, but I'm not likely drafting him either. Last year, Diontae Johnson was the receiver to own in Pittsburgh. He had the most receptions on the team, the most yards, the most air yards of his career, but 0 touchdowns, which is a less than ideal number of touchdowns. Johnson averages close to 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns a season. Clearly the transition from Beige Ben to Kenny Pickett hurt his numbers, but will that continue into this year? Since I'm already calling for more pass work and Pickett to take a step forward, it just makes sense for Johnson to see his numbers increase. A few more yards and a couple of touchdowns would put him about wide receiver 30, which is what his current ADP is. Hooray me! I'm thinking just under 1,000 yards and 3 touchdowns. George Pickens was a second-round draft pick last year. As a rookie, he finished just behind Diontae Johnson with 53 receptions for 800 yards and 4 touchdowns. It's easy to get enamored with Pickens. He's got the ideal size and speed profile. He was making one-handed catches every other week as a rookie. But it's not all sunshine and schnozberries. According to his 2022 route tree, he struggled on slants, digs, and curls. In fact, he struggled to get separation on anything other than deep routes, which is concerning because I'm a big fan of Pickens, but I really like good route runners. Pickens is listed as the wide receiver 37, and that sounds a wee kooky. To me, that implies 0 progress for Pickens and Pickett. Call this one nothing but a gut call, but I think Pickens finishes inside the top 30 this year and becomes the receiver to own. This is a bold take from a man drunk on his own power and liquor. Allen Robinson was once a wasted talent on bad teams. His yards per route dropped from 1.33 in 2021 to 1.14 and then 0.93 last year. He missed 12 games over the last 2 seasons. He's been one of the least efficient receivers in the league, and I've seen plays where he flat out looks like he's not even trying. If there's any upside for Robinson, it's that he's expected to move inside to the slot. Last year, the Steelers ran 11 personnel about 63% of the time, which means 3 receivers, which means Allen Robinson. They were a top 10 running out of that scheme. Allen Robinson is currently the wide receiver 89. The next level of receivers are Calvin Austin III, Hakeem Butler, and Miles Boykin. Austin was a good prospect out of Memphis, a tiny prospect whose rookie season was hampered by a foot sprain. He certainly got speed. He looks like the backup slot receiver, and I wouldn't be surprised if they used him on some gadget plays or tried to get him in the kick return game. Hakeem Butler just came off a season with the XFL's Battlehawks, where he had 51 catches for nearly 600 yards and 8 touchdowns. Miles Boykin was a 3rd-round pick by the Ravens back in 2019. He's a big dude with good speed and very little production at the NFL level. The rest of the receivers are Cody White, Jamarcus Bradley, Gunnar Olszewski, Dan Chisena, Dez Patrick, and Jordan Byrd. I'm not targeting anybody in this receiver room, but I'll take Diontae Johnson at cost in all formats. Give me George Pickens in all formats. I acknowledge I'm probably unreasonably optimistic for him this year. In Dynasty, I remain stubbornly bullish for the future. I packed a lunch, and I am prepared to die on this hill. I can't recommend Allen Robinson anywhere. I can see how I could be wrong. Every year, some vet bounces back, but my gut says seek your entertainment elsewhere. He's so cheap in best ball, he might be worth it, but it just feels... I wouldn't buy Calvin Austin in Dynasty, but if you already have him, you might as well just hold on and ride the ride. There's a possibility his value increases this season. Maybe you can trade him. Pat Freiermuth finished as the tight end 7 last year. He had 63 receptions for 732 yards and 2 touchdowns. His targets, receptions, and yardage were all up from his rookie year. but his touchdowns took a dip, which didn't concern me with a rookie quarterback. If anything, I was happy to see so many targets. Pickett and Freiermuth built a connection early, one I'd expect to see grow. Freiermuth never wowed me physically. He's not uber athletic, but he's very consistent. It took me a bit to understand what I was looking at. Pat Freiermuth is Jason Witten, that go-to dude that somehow always gets more than you think he should and will last forever. Witten played for 17 seasons. I'm not predicting that, but in his prime, from 2004 to 2015, Witten averaged about 900 yards and 5 touchdowns a season. I don't think Pat Freiermuth is a top 5 guy. He lacks the athleticism of a Travis Kelce, Mark Andrews, Darren Waller, or George Kittle. But he could be a top 10 at the position for his whole career. His ADP is tight end 9 right now. Darnell Washington was a 3rd-round pick. He's 6'7" with 84th percentile speed. He's a huge, fast receiving option, a stark contrast in profile to Pat Freiermuth. Washington was considered a 1st-round talent. So why did such a huge athletic guy slide in the draft? The first reason is health concerns. He had a lingering foot and knee issue. Second, despite being a huge, freaky athlete at a big school, his college production wasn't impressive. Just 28 receptions last year for 454 yards and 2 touchdowns. And that's not all due to missing time for injury. He doesn't have the best hands. Compared to the rest of the rookie tight end class, Washington showed one of the highest drop rates for catchable targets. Not to poo-poo on the man, he's only 21 years old, and there's still plenty of time to develop. Plus, working alongside Freiermuth is a huge plus. He's also rated as one of the best for breaking tackles. There is a role for Darnell Washington here, even in his rookie season, but it likely won't be as consistent or valuable for fantasy football as many want. Connor Heyward was drafted as a tight end last year. I faded him because he's too short for the position, and they already had Pat Freiermuth, so what was the point? Turns out, Heyward actually got a little work last year, and he looked good. Well, now it looks as though the Steelers have moved him to fullback, which is what I believe allowed them to move on from Derek Watt. Heyward should make for a great fullback. He's got the size to do it, and if he catches the occasional pass, it would make for a sneaky play in their offense. Is that fantasy relevant? No, but it could help them win games. Zach Gentry is also on the roster. He's averaged 19 receptions and 150 yards over the past 2 seasons. I'll take Pat Freiermuth in all formats. He's not the exciting boom prospect I look for, but I love his floor and consistency. He's a set-it-and-forget-it top 10 option, one of the few at a volatile position. I don't love Darnell Washington anywhere, really. The best I can do is say maybe in Dynasty. I don't think Washington will get much volume. I see him as an interesting wrinkle to leak out for the occasional deep catch or random touchdown, but it's not a priority pickup for me. There are other tight ends in this class that I think could be more valuable in a couple years. Fantasy Pros listed him as the 34th rookie off the board and 5th tight end, just in front of Cowboys rookie tight end Luke Schoonmaker. Personally, I'd rather invest in the Packers' Tucker Kraft. He's 9 spots lower and has just as good a chance to be relevant, if not better. Last year, defensive tackle Cameron Heyward was a top 15 for fantasy. He had 39 tackles, 10.5 sacks, and 1 forced fumble. He's still playing at a high level despite being 34 years old. TJ Watt is so goddamn manly, he tore his pec and missed 7 games. He still finished with 27 tackles, 8 for loss, 5.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, and 2 interceptions. He's averaged 13 sacks a season, which would have put him in the top 10 last year. Maybe this year, he tears someone else's pec. Alex Highsmith filled the Watt void last year. He had 38 tackles and 12 tackles for loss. His numbers dipped slightly from the year prior, even with playing an extra game. The only number that went up was his sacks. He finished with 14.5. Good enough to be a fantasy top 10. Cole Holcomb is new to the team. His first 3 seasons in Washington, he averaged 63 tackles, which is good enough to get him in the top 10. But last year, he suffered a foot sprain. Stupid feet. He missed half the season. He could have another high-volume role here. Joey Porter Jr. was a 2nd-round draft pick, the 5th corner taken. They used the Bears' 2nd-round pick after trading away Chase Claypool. Nice. He should be an immediate starter across from Patrick Peterson. Last year, he logged 440 snaps for Penn State, resulting in 24 tackles and 4 assists. Porter had 9 pass breakups and surrendered a QB rating when targeted of 63.6. Minkah Fitzpatrick was a top 15 safety last year for fantasy, with 56 tackles and 6 interceptions. That's a career high for interceptions. This is Minkah's 8th year in the league, but he's still just 26 years old. He remains a top option at safety. I don't know if they can improve from last year's record of 9-8. Everybody in their division is in the mix for a wild card berth. The Steelers' strength of schedule is ranked as the 8th easiest, with the Vegas odds that they'll repeat the same damn record. So let's take a look. I think week 1 belongs to the Niners, then 4 straight weeks of wins over the Texans, Rams, Packers, and Cardinals, followed by 4 straight losses to the division and the Jags, then a loss to the Patriots. I accidentally wrote a win over the Seahawks. I think they lose that one, but we can't time travel to fix it, so let's just move on. A win over the Raiders, 3 more after the bye, and then a loss to the Ravens. That's a 10-7 record, if you don't count the mistake I made in week 17. And I'm just now realizing that the schedule reads horizontally, like every other thing in the Western world. Did you know that I was doing that? Were you even going to tell me? You don't care. All right. Thanks for watching Shut Up Football. Check out our Instagram page to find some of our custom graphics, or the Discord if you want to get chatty. There's a link in the description for both. Leave your comments below, like, subscribe, say hi to your mom for me, and we'll catch you next time. Peace!
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. It sound right, boy.
I'm gonna eat that a second time. Even better. But I'll take Diontae and Beyonce. I'll take both Diontae and Beyonce in best ball, least ball, medium ball. We're getting real close, buddy. We're almost there. Just another couple of reads, and I will untie you. That's 3 minutes and 18 seconds of uninterrupted Baja Men.